Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fantastical Comics panel. My name is Maegen Rose, and I'm a high school librarian in Brooklyn, New York, and I'll be moderating this session. I am so excited to welcome today's panelists. First up, we have Bev Johnson, illustrator of Flash Gordon, The Girl from Infinity, Volume 1, published by Papercutz. Marz Jr., illustrator of Transformers, Worst Bot Ever, Meet Ballpoint, published by Skybound Entertainment, Image Comics. Nnedi Okorafor, author of The Space Cat, published by Macmillan Children's Book. And Smitty, author of Transformers, Worst Bot Ever, Meet Ballpoint, published by Skybound Entertainment, Image Comics. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you this morning. I have a bunch of questions about your fantastical books that I had the pleasure of reading before they've officially come out. And so I wanted to start with an opening question for each of you. And I'm going to ask you, Smitty, if you would kick us off with the first response. Each of your comics transport readers into exciting, fantastical worlds. What inspired you to tell these particular stories?
Oh, in my case with the Transformers, getting that offer to pitch and to carve out a weird little corner of that universe was the opportunity of it was an amazing opportunity. So the chance to tell a story that's kind of an offbeat story in a well-known franchise was amazing. Getting to tell something that's more humor-based and more like based on relationships between these characters, where it's not always like this big, fantastic robot war. I get to tell a little bit of a smaller story that still has a lot of heart, and it was fantastic. I can't wait for people to see it.
Awesome. Nnedi, would you mind going next?
Oh, yeah. What was the question again?
What inspired you to tell this particular story?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so my cat. It's really very simple. My cat is just a lot. He has so much personality, and he has taught me so many things. And I live closely with him. And you can't live closely with any kind of creature, be they human or not human, and not have them inspire as a creative, and not have them inspire you to write a story about them. I mean, it's literally this cat being around me, and yeah, it's quite simple.
Wonderful. Bev, would you go next?
Well, the pitch was just so fun, and Marguerite's script was just so amazing, and the characters were just so fun, and something that I would have loved at that age group, like middle grade, middle school-ish. So it just felt very perfect, and like it would be super fun.
Awesome. And Marz.
Well, I love Transformers since I was a kid, so it was a great, fun, amazing opportunity to draw them in a comic form.
Wonderful. Bev, your reimagining of Flash Gordon brings a fresh perspective to a classic story. What was it like to reinterpret such an iconic story, and how did you approach designing a futuristic world that feels both new and nostalgic?
Yeah, it felt like a responsibility because you want to pay tribute to the original, and add a lot of like homages and nods and keep the spirit of the original. So I wanted to keep the heroic elements, but still have like a fresh spin on it. So I did focus on just kind of transporting it into the 2020s and using the kind of like bones of the story, but with new characters, and the characters felt just very unique to me. And I really focused on imagery that I would have loved as a teenager, and kind of a lot of like pseudo-utopian imagery, but mixed with a lot of like classic sci-fi and fantasy.
So, Nnedi, as someone who writes science fiction and fantasy for all ages, the Space Cat blends this adventure, Nigerian culture, and like this cat, your cat living a double life. How do you approach how does your storytelling change when writing for a younger reader versus an adult?
I think that it's different when, because I've run the gambit of audiences in the stories that I tell. So I've done children's writing, young adult, middle grade, and adult. And I would say that if I were writing a picture book, I set that over there. Now, if we're talking about even with graphic novels and prose, and then middle grade, young adult, and adult, all of those, they all come from the same place for me. So it's like, I wouldn't say that there's anything different in terms of the way that the story comes, because like for me, when I start writing something, I don't know what category it's for. I'm not writing to anything. I won't know if I'm writing for young adults. I won't know if I'm writing for middle grade or adult. I sit down and I start writing. I'm a pantser, so I don't even outline, so I don't know. And so what comes. I will say that in the stories that are for middle grade and young adults versus adults, it's not that they're lighter. It's not that I'll purposely not deal with heavy issues and all of that. I think that the only difference is that I may take more care in the way that I approach things that are heavier, like heavier topics. I may take more care in explaining certain aspects of it. I won't pull back from it, but I'll take more care. Whereas with adult stories, I won't take any care at all. I'll just throw you in there and you'll have to deal with it either way. I think that's the main difference, but all of it really comes from the same place.
Awesome, thank you. Marz and Brian, this is for both of you to respond. In Transformers' Worst Bot Ever, you introduce readers to Ballpoint, very cool character, who is trying to find his way in his community. How did you approach creating a story that's its own fresh installment to this very well-known, well-loved franchise?
Well, I think first off, I operate under the philosophy that every comic is somebody's first comic.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want somebody going into this with my expectation that they have 35 years of Optimus Prime knowledge somewhere in their head. So it's all got to be established and like in a fun way right off the bat. Whether you know nothing about the Transformers, whether you're a huge fan of the franchise, either way, this is going to be a good fit for the reader. A lot of the stuff that Ballpoint represents to me is, you know, finding out kind of who you are, whether or not like you like where you are, and trying to fit in with the people that you fit in with. And hopefully the reader, the kids who pick up the book and check it out will get a sense of that, like that, you know, they're not the only people going through that. Little pen robots also go through that.
Marz, do you have some thoughts as well?
I mean, just coming from a huge fan of Transformers, you just try to, pay homage and respect to what was there before, and then you kind of just put your own spin on it and what you would like to see.
Awesome. For our illustrators, Bev and Marz, illustration plays a huge role in shaping the mood and tone of a comic. Can you tell us about your design process? How do you translate the text into the artwork that reflects action and emotions, that the actions and emotions that are needed to bring a story alive? Marz, if you want to start us off.
Kind of with the design, I loved the first animated Transformers, so I pulled from those designs and tried to kind of silly them up, make them kind of goofy and fun.
Mhm.
And I added eyeballs, which they don't normally have. They kind of help with kind of a cheat of adding expressions to robots. Uh, yeah.
And Bev.
For this project, we started off with the character designs, which happens to be my favorite part because they're like the heart of the story and how you are kind of seeing the world of the story. So I was just really happy to begin with really getting these characters down and making them each their own person, and then designing the environments also just feels like creating their own type of characters. Like the environments all feel like their own type of mood.
So, this is for all of you, and I will ask Bev for you to answer first. Fantasy and sci-fi often reflect real-world issues. How do you find the balance between fun storytelling and like the deeper themes that, for instance, Nnedi mentioned in earlier?
I think for Flash, it's like a very hopeful story, just a kind of classic underdog hero story. So I was kind of looking at like Star Wars, like the main characters, like the rebels versus the Empire for that kind of inspiration. Um, just to tell a story that is about these underdogs fighting oppression, but it is through the lens of these very young characters. So we didn't want it to feel too intense or dark.
Nnedi, you had mentioned this earlier in the previous question about, taking more care, but for adults sort of throwing them in. Did you want to say anything more about like how you find the fun to it, even when you are throwing an adult into the story?
Yeah, I mean, all of my stories start with the character first. And so you're looking through the world, you're looking at the world through the character's eyes. And so in the Space Cat, we have Periwinkle, the Oriental short-haired cat, and he's smarmy and cheeky and he's secretive and he has a lot going on. So this character, he looks at the world in this way where he sees so much. And so there's going to be fun. You're dealing with the cat, all right. So you already know there's going to be fun. But with this same character, he's also going to get into things. Cats always get into things, and he's curious, and he's gonna experience those darker things as well, and then he's gonna have to deal with those things. So for me, that balance of the light, I don't want to use light and dark, the fun, and then the depth, the more difficult things, those will naturally come through the character. That's how I arrive at it. It's usually through the way that the character is and the way that the character sees the world. So that balance feels natural, where I'm not having to add, I need to add something that's darker, or not darker, more difficult, or add something that's more fun and whimsical. It's more like seeing through the character's eyes, so you get that natural balance, and it's sort of organic.
Well, thank you. Smitty,
Yes.
how do you find the fun in the storyteller? How do you balance that fun in the storytelling with deeper themes?
Oh, it's kind of like I try to make everything as entertaining as possible. I still can't believe they actually let me do this book, to be honest with you. It's the worst spot ever. So it has a very unserious tone, like from the character standpoint, but we do touch upon, themes like friendship and fitting in and what's the right thing to do in any given situation. So it's kind of, it is a balancing act between telling an entertaining story and not beating people over the head with the message. Making jokes wherever you can, but also having these characters be relatable and try to have the reader see some of themselves in that character, even if it is a ballpoint pen robot.
Awesome. Marz?
Yeah, I think Ballpoint is trying to fit in, which hopefully is a relatable theme, which I know as a kid I was always trying to fit in. And then I think, yeah, again with the silly bills, kind of always just trying to play to the height of your intelligence, but in the dumbest way possible.
Awesome. Well, speaking about the themes that exist, each of these books explore themes of like self-discovery and identity and belonging. What do you hope young readers take away from the characters in your stories? And I would even broaden that to your work in general. What are you hoping that your young readers will take away? And Bev, I'll ask you to start us off.
I think there's a lot of different young characters in the story, and they all kind of deal with things in a different way. So I think everyone will find someone to relate to in the story, and even the less sympathetic characters, I think, are still relatable. Like our villain is not very mustache twirling, he's kind of conflicted. So I think all the characters have something that they can teach the reader or see themselves in.
So, Marz?
What was the question again? Sorry.
The question is, what do you want readers to take away from this title or from your work in general when they encounter your work? What do you want them to?
Fun, to laugh, to get into the story, kind of fall into the characters. Like I love like Chris Farley is such a silly character, but in Tommy Boy, he's so goofy in the beginning, and then by the end, you're rooting for him to sell those brake pads. So the silliness hopefully kind of brings you into the character and makes you kind of root for them, and then at the end, hopefully they achieve what they want.
Nnedi, what about you? What do you want young readers to take away from Space Cat or from your work in general?
Yeah, I think for my work in general, over 20 books, I don't know. That could be, there's a lot going on there. So we'll just focus on the Space Cat. I think that one of the things that I would love for young and older readers to come away with is that the world can surprise you. The world often will surprise you. There are lots of things that happen. We're dealing with a very curious cat. So a cat, and he gets into stuff and he gets surprised quite often. There are mystical things embedded in just our normal lives. So there's that. Like I want readers to come away from this book feeling that the world is a magical place. So there's that. I think that also I'd like readers to come away with this idea of just being curious, looking at the world and just being interested in the world around you. I think the idea of friendship can come from many different places. It can come from unexpected places. And I guess the last thing would be kind of what I've already said, but like the idea that the world can be complex. The world can be just kind of, the world can be a lot of things, surprising. Let it surprise you. Be curious. Open your eyes.
Thank you. And Smitty, what do you want readers to take away from your work and from this project?
I mean, the Transformers is a monster franchise. It's been around for years and years, and there's a lot of lore and the history goes pretty deep. And I've had not only are a lot of kids excited for it, which I'm glad, but also parents view this as an opportunity to share this franchise with their kids. It's a great vehicle for parents and kids to share At the same time, without being overly complicated. There's enough in there for like the moms and dads who are going to read along, for them to chuckle if they know, and then it's a whole new vehicle for the kids. So I'm very excited to see it, like that bridge between like the old generation of fans and a new generation of fans have an opportunity to experience something together.
Wonderful. And for our final question, and this is way more self-serving, what are you working on next, or what are you working on currently, or what can we expect from you next after this project? And Smitty, I'll let you go ahead and start.
I just wrapped up the PB&J book series from HarperCollins. I did 6 books of that, and that was a ton of fun. That's unlikely friendships between a P, a B, and a blue jay on a farm that have misadventures together. I'm currently wrapping up another series that I wrote and drew called Band Camp, about a bunch of misfit instruments that form a bond at summer camp. They're like the worst in their group. It's a ukulele, an accordion, a triangle, and who's the last one? A kazoo. And like they have to find a way to be the best at band camp. And I'm working on Transformers. There's going to be another book after this one. And then I have a new book series, which hasn't been announced yet, that I'll be writing and drawing, coming out in 2028.
So you're very busy, and we're excited.
Trying to stay busy, yeah.
And
play a lot of video games too.
Awesome. Marz, what about you? What can we expect from you next?
Yeah, I'm working on drawing the next Worst Spot Ever, the 2nd issue.
Okay, awesome. Bev?
I'm excited to keep working in the Flash universe, but I also just wrapped on Fosterland, which is another picture book series. And then I kind of work all over the place. So I am working in like middle grade fantasy, romance, and me and my wife have a comic that we work on. So it's kind of all over the place.
Wonderful. And Nnedi, what can we expect next?
Yeah, well, I just had my adult novel, Death of the Author, that just came out in January, and that's out there doing lots of stuff. And then The Space Cat comes out, and then somewhere either before or after The Space Cat, I'm not quite sure, but I have the 2nd novella in the She Who Knows series, and yeah, I'm not sure when that's going to come out, but I guess that would be considered fantasy. So, but yeah, it's a novella, so I'm also all over the place.
Awesome. And just a couple things that weren't on here. I'm gonna pause for just a second. So sorry, I do have more questions that I can ask. Rebecca, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, sorry, because I thought I had timed it kind of for what we had, but okay. A question for our illustrators: how do you determine a color palette when you are deciding to start your drawing, whether you're starting with a character or an environment? How do you determine what's gonna be that color palette?
For me, I went back to the old cartoon. I kind of started there with, I mean, for the Transformers, Decepticons are very purpley, and the Autobots kind of have like a bright or like a orangey red color to the background. So kind of started there for when they're in their bases, and then you just tried to make it kind of colorful and fun. And you got to kind of, a little tricky with the characters being bright colors and their colors pretty set. So try to pick colors that would pull them to the foreground.
Bev, what about you? How do you determine your color palette for a story?
For pretty much every project, but especially this one, it was all about mood. So the kind of happier, more comforting scenes are kind of a more familiar palette, and then the scarier scenes are a more alarming, a more eerie palette, just kind of scene by scene. Each environment kind of required its own mood.
Nnedi, you mentioned that you don't outline, you sit down and you start a story and you don't know necessarily if this is going to be for an adult or if it's going to be for a younger reader. At what point in that process are you able to determine I am going with this much longer story and this might be for an adult, or I am writing this and this feels perfect for middle grade, or this feels perfect for younger? How do you, at what point in your process do you determine that?
I never do. It's when it's done. When it's done, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this would be called that, or someone else would have to kind of peg that. But like, yeah, I'll write the whole thing. I'll let it go. I just kind of relax and let the story go, let the story come however it's going to come, and whatever's going to be in it is going to be in it. So I'll write a story and the main character will be 13 years old, and then it goes to be whatever it is. It could still be an adult novel, who knows, but I'll know when it's finished. And typically sometimes it will have to be when someone else looks at it, especially if it's between middle grade and young adult. I don't know. I'm not, when I'm writing something, I don't really think about those things, because I feel like if I think about those things, it's going to limit the story. It's going to limit where the story wants to go. So I just kind of let it be. And then when it's finished, I'm like, oh, okay, then this is what that is. And like, for example, my first novel, Zara the Windseeker, I wasn't thinking about writing a young adult novel at all. I had just written an adult novel before that with similar type, in the similar world, similar characters. And then this story came as I just sat down and started writing this story, and then it came. And then when I finished, that's what it was. So yeah, it's usually well after the fact, well after I finished it.
Awesome. Smitty, when I think about the characters for all of these books, we have Flash Gordon, we have Ballpoint, we have Periwinkle. All of them are so unique and have all of these unique qualities that make them compelling characters. What do you think makes for a strong protagonist for a story?
Well, I think like most kids, every day they face some sort of challenge. So you try to amplify that to the nth degree with these characters, these space aliens that are living here on Earth, and how do you make that relatable to a kid, while at the same time retaining what makes it special, what makes it unique. I think it's the little things, the real world elements that keep it grounded. The problems that they face, could a kid possibly be facing that as well? Any chance you get to draw a parallel between something that's a problem for somebody in real life and also a problem for this fantastical alien being, I think that's what hooks a reader. That's what brings people to care about these characters. If they could see a little bit of themselves in what they're reading, that goes a long way to making a compelling character and a compelling. You want to follow him on his journey. You want to see if he succeeds in whatever the challenge is. And I think like most kids can relate to that, because being a kid is pretty challenging in and of itself.
Thank you. Nnedi, what about you? What do you think makes for a compelling protagonist in a middle grade story?
I don't know if I have like a direct answer for that. I know it when I see it. And like, because if I give one answer, I can think of examples that don't fit that. It's different for me. It's different every time. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those I'll know it when I see it kind of thing. Like I can't flat out define it. I know that there's a selfish aspect to telling the story. For me, like if the story bores me, I'm not interested. So it's like it's not even about what the readers want. It's I have to like if it bores me, if I'm not interested, then I'm not interested and I'm not going to do it. So there's that part of so there's the personal aspect to it, but I don't know any example that I can give. I probably can think of an example that contradicts that. So like I guess I'll just go with I know it when I know it when I see it.
What about you, Beverly? Bev.
Um, well, personally, I think my own taste is I just love a conflicted character because I mean, especially for middle grade, because I think you're getting into or at least I was getting into like an angsty phase. So I just loved a character that has like a war within them. That sounds very dramatic, but I think that was always my favorite type of character at that age, and it still is.
Awesome. And Marz.
I think something that's relatable in some kind of aspect. Ballpoint is trying to fit in, and I think he overcompensates and tries to do things that he thinks that, the other robots want to hear to try to fit in, and it backfires on him. And like Nnedi's saying, like something selfish, something that you want to read, that's something that excites you to keep going. You kind of need inspiration if you're gonna draw a comic or write a comic. It's a lot of work.
Awesome. And I think just two more questions. And this one might lend itself more to you, Bev, and to you, Marz, as illustrators. When you are in that design phase, is there ever a thought about, like representation? Are you trying to represent what is more familiar? Are you looking more broadly at the world? Marz, if you'd like to start.
Um, I mean, coming from established characters, I'm obviously looking at the old designs, and then I'm trying to exaggerate some of the shapes to kind of make them interesting, kind of big, medium, small is kind of a guide that I follow. So if it has a small head, maybe like a giant chest and huge shoulders and smaller arms, or some kind of combination of that. And yeah, they all kind of have to fit together and then fit in the world that you're creating with the backgrounds. But it's a little bit of a cheat when you're working with something that's established. You just kind of have to tweak it and kind of put your own spin on it.
Bev.
Yeah, I think it does depend on the project, but especially for this one, it was kind of a blend of the fantasy elements and all the characters. I wanted them to really feel like real people that you could just run into, even though they're in space.
And so similar question for you, Nnedi and Smitty, when you are thinking about writing a story, do you sort of have an idea of what that character might look like who are you or who you're writing to or who you're writing about? Nnedi, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't write to any audiences, so there's that. That's just an established thing. I don't write to audiences. I just write. The characters, for me, my characters tend to come to me complete as who they are. So there's no swapping out of different aspects to build. I don't build my characters. They're more organic than that. So they're like, it's a different there's a idea of like building a character that is like a robot, for pun intended, haha, since we got Transformers people here. But there's a building the character that's like a robot, not a Transformer though, that's different, versus an organic character that you can't, like if you were to take an arm and replace the arm or replace something, it would die. So it's like, my characters are very organic in that way, where they come to me whole and complete. And then as I'm writing about them, they become clearer, they become more like I understand who they are more as I write about them. So yeah, I that's how I know, that's how I learn my character. It's not it's not something where I have to think about like representation or anything like that. My characters are just who they are, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Smitty.
Well, the interesting thing about working on a book like Transformers is these characters have existed, the majority of them, except for the Ballpoint character that Marz and I created. They've existed for decades. So how do you give a fresh spin on an established personality? There's only so much we can get away with because of that. I mean, there's Skybound and there's Hasbro and there's licensing notes and stuff like that. But we still have a lot of fun with these characters and get an opportunity to show them sometimes very, very serious characters in a very humorous way. And that's just been a great experience to be able to contribute a new facet to the Transformers franchise.
Wonderful. And really the last question this time, and this is about the author illustrator relationship. Smitty and Marz, if you could talk about what is that process of like writing and sharing the art and bringing it together?
Oh, I grew up reading mostly Marvel and DC comics. I got the opportunity to work at Marvel and DC as an editor, where I would hire authors and illustrators to collaborate. So even though I do a lot of work on my own, where I write and draw my own stuff, I love being able to collaborate with a talented artist anytime I can, because it just brings something entirely new to the table. You could have it in your head one way about visually how I would draw this, but then when you see what somebody else does with it, and you smile. Comics are great like that. It's a really unique opportunity to collaborate, where the story is greater because of the sum of its talent.
Awesome. Marz.
Yeah, I think the collaboration aspect is really fun. Seeing what Smitty wrote and then trying to put my spin on it, but also keep it to what he intended is a fun challenge, and hopefully when it's finished, it's something that puts a smile on his face.
Bev.
Yeah, I was really excited to work with Marguerite, and I just really loved the script. So I was a little nervous about kind of fulfilling her vision, but I think it turned out pretty good. And I think it is about like communicating the intent of the script and kind of what imagery you want, and that kind of symbiotic relationship.
And Nnedi, similar question, but as someone who is writing something that's not at all a part of a franchise or some other story, how do you approach turning over something that you've created, something that's so personal, like stemming from your cat, to an illustrator?
Yeah, so the illustrator for the Space Cat is Tana Ford, and we'd worked together on other projects previously. We'd worked together on Black Panther, and then after that, we just loved each other's work so much that we then went on and did a graphic novel called LaGuardia, and this was an adult graphic novel, and it was just such an amazing experience. That was with Dark Horse, and each time we worked together, our relationship got deeper as, illustrator to writer. And like we figured we got to test out different ways and different methods. So by the time we got to the Space Cat, it's been just like the process and the collaboration. We know each other so well. Like we're both really weird people. And like in a good way, like we vibe off of each other's weirdness. And so we have that trust and that understanding of how the other works. So by the time we got to the Space Cat, it's at a new level. So like I love, as a novelist, the collaborative aspect of comics is a joy for me, because it's just to be able to create something that I never would have created myself, and then to see like ideas that I might have, and then see the artist take those ideas and then just do these amazing things that I would have never thought of, or just take an idea that I had and take it even further, has been, it's just, I love the collaborative aspect of it. And just to see like the result is always something that I would have never imagined, or that I could never have done myself. So yeah, I think that like with the Space Cat, we definitely got to another level.
Wonderful. Well, Nnedi, Bev, Marz, Smitty, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to all the librarians and educators for joining us. Next, we have 3 concurrent author and editor spotlights. Remember that if you miss any sessions, they will be available on demand shortly. Enjoy the rest of your day of middle grade magic. Bye, everybody.